All right. Shall we?
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm really good. You know, I was thinking we should probably do a little more of an intro this time.
For sure. An intro sounds good. Well, hey everyone. It's Esther Levy. We're with Sonia here. We're doing Role Model Podcast, where we dive a little bit deeper into some of the topics that we both are working on this week. For me, it was more on emotional waves and the ebbs and flows in our experience and how it affects our progress and our performance and our productivity at home and in the workplace. So, yeah.
Just that.
Just
my name is Sonia, and I'm here with Esther. I'm representing my business, TheTechMargin, and Esther and I are we are friends. We met on a mastermind program looking for fellow female leaders and business women who were solopreneurs like us, who understand this digital world and like are trying to figure out the path. So that's how we came together. And as Esther said, we're going to be sharing what we're working on and also tips for you guys for what we're really trying to do here and achieve here is uplift women in particular who are on their own journey on life, particularly if they're trying to make businesses, if you're trying to do something difficult and you don't really have a lot of support. We hope we can be that for you because we're learning techniques and tools and we'd love to share them beyond just ourselves because, you know, we help each other out. Why not help y'all out? And for me this week, I work with AI a lot lately, Esther, and I don't know why I keep zooming out there. That's good. So I've been working with AI a lot since I started my business, TheTechMargin. And as a software engineer and an artist myself, I'm always really interested in that creative intersection between tech and creativity. But I'm finding the more I work with these AI tools, what's really being demanded of us now is that we get really, really clear on what it is we want. And I just think that's so interesting that that's the ask. That's what technology is asking of us in this day, because we need to do that anyway. But it's really interesting that technology would be the thing to push us to get clear.
I mean, it's a great analogy in the sense that I think even with humans, we always think that, oh, it's obvious. They know what we need and want, and they're in our life for so long. They should know by now.
If you don't know me by now.
So I think
say it to herself.
Yeah, no, 100%. No, I'm saying for me, it's, I was working with AI today as well, yesterday, every day. And when I do work with it, it's interesting to see how specific we have to get. And we always have to kind of go in with this clean slate of being very, very clear because the outcome is going to really be impacted by the input. And it's, I think, from where you're coming from with tech and where I'm coming from an emotional aspect, it's just like whatever input we put in, if we're overwhelmed or we're feeling this emotional wave or upheaval, that is what is going to return, or be there in the ask. So yeah,
absolutely. For sure. And also the idea that clearing the slate before you engage, I think is another place this analogy fits with life, because like when we show up for a conversation like this podcast, if we're still thinking about all the other things we're doing in our day and we're distracted, it's not going to be very engaging. So like in everything we do, we want to show up 100%, including AI prompting.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that helps us segue into like the difference between a masculine approach and a feminine approach is that for men, I feel like they can have a very set schedule and then work within those means. And for us as women, we have a schedule of sorts, or we have like a task, a list of things that we need to get done, but not always do they happen either in that order or in that experience. And I even found it today. I had a very specific list of the things that had to get done, and maybe I got to a few of them, but they all progressed only very, very little. And it can feel unproductive, but there was kind of that emotional reset that had to happen in certain areas. And for women, it's that space that is the space that we operate from. And as soon as we get that clarity, everything else goes right. Because, yeah.
Esther, are you talking about like, what I'm hearing is the ability to kind of step into trusting that the next step is going to be the right step, sort of?
So the thing is that I find that one of the greatest challenges that we have when we kind of go into the world, even into our own lives, personal or business, is like, we have this set of things that we have to do, like a schedule, but then sometimes it doesn't pan out the way we think, or the outcome. Like, we'll have to have different conversations. I feel like for us, because we have so much more of, like, we're so much more in tuned, and for women, it's like we have our finger on the emotional pulse. Even when it comes to team members and things like that, it's really like spending that time intuitively with them rather than giving them like marching orders, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think we have to know when to come in and out of those modes. Because certainly if you're leading people, there's some types of people that just need really clear prescriptive instructions, which was always a struggle for me because I'm like a big enabler. I'm like, just go do it. I'll remove your roadblocks. Like, I hired you because you know what you're doing, right? But I want to hear about the emotional waves. I like that word that you used at the beginning. Tell me more about that.
So I always say, like, emotions are like the first draft. And what I mean by that is that, like, sometimes you'll get like this emotional wave, for example, like anger or the sense of feeling overwhelmed. And usually that is just the first draft, in the sense that actually, and people get so fixated on that. They'll be like, I go into this task, I try whatever it is they're going to try doing, an endeavor or a challenge, or they go into their day and they're like, it's so overwhelming. And what they do is they use that first emotion to gloss over the entire experience rather than just peeling back a little bit and being like, okay, that's the first draft. So the example I gave was my kids went up to the mountains and they're away for the summer. And I found myself getting angry. As they were leaving, I was like getting angry. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? Why am I angry? And it turned out that I knew I was going to miss them. And that first layer was like a frustration of sorts.
Like defensive.
Defensive. And it kind of came out by me kind of, feeling a little bit restricted and tense. And I kind of sat with that for a minute and then be like, okay, what is this? And then I was able to say, oh, okay, it's not that I'm angry. I'm not frustrated. I'm not tense. I'm just going to miss them. But it took some time to kind of move through that wave. Once that space cleared, once I was able to breathe and get through it. And I find this a lot in general in life with any task. Like, if I don't have the answers, I just wait for it to appear. We're not magicians. We can't just pull things out of a hat. And how emotions work is they work in waves. You kind of, one comes up, a wave comes out, comes all the way up to the beach, and then it kind of ripples back in. And if you think about it, we have to go back into ourselves and sort out, see, that specific emotion compared with, everything else, or meeting all the other parts of ourselves, how it kind of does. And then what is the next kind of.
Right. And to that end, like, it's amazing how simple this idea is, but I don't think many of us actually internalize the truth of it, that emotions, it's really important that we remember emotions are not us. They are flowing through us. We're feeling an emotion. The emotion isn't us, especially the heavier emotions. I think it can be really hard to separate ourselves from the feeling that we're having. And if you can do that, like you said, Esther, kind of observe it more like a wave and know that this is just like, this is the first layer of emotion for you in your case, like being angry. perhaps because this was a plan that was already in motion and you couldn't change it. And part of you subconsciously knew, I'm going to miss my kids, but I can't do anything about it. So that creates like a tension point, which comes out as frustration. But like that first wave, if you hadn't have rode that out, you maybe wouldn't have seen that. And I think a lot of us, as you said, we get stuck in the first one and we don't take that time to interrogate what's really going on.
And if you think about the word emotion, it's just emote is like it's movement. There's motion. It's like emotion. So the motion in itself is, so if you think about it, it's thoughts, like there are thoughts and then there are emotions. And it depends. It's like saying the chicken and the egg, with our thoughts and then our emotions. So usually there's a thought that creates a sense of whatever it kind of signals to the next piece, which is how it kind of almost vibrates through our body. So depending on where you are, what you're exposed to, your process, it's going to determine how you're going to experience it. You know, there's a saying that you are a product of your environment. So you're influenced more by your environment than you are by your personality. And sometimes where we do get frustrated with certain emotions is that it feels unnatural to us. Like let's say feeling like angry, right? Or frustrated. I'm like, it doesn't feel natural to me to feel that frustration when, obviously it's a natural occurrence. But the question is what's being manufactured here? You know, what's going on? And when we're able to peel back and see like, what is the quality of our thoughts or what is the quality of our environment? And that could be our home, our diet, our support system. Are we feeling that support? Are we stressed? Do we have community? You know, do we not? And I actually had somebody reach out and ask me a question, merging from like single motherhood into finding a partner. Somebody asked me a question today where they needed something from me that I wasn't able to give them. And they didn't realize that the question they asked was extremely isolating and extremely stressful, because what it reminded me was that most people in my situation have a team of people possibly that they can reach out to and lean on. And in my case, it wasn't exactly the case. So they had this ask put me in a really uncomfortable situation. And it was tough to get through. And I found myself also facing an emotion or humiliation that I haven't had to feel in a really long time, because I've just learned how to survive on my own.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that is the truth, right? Like when we are on our own, we don't have the opportunity to rub up against other people's emotions and thoughts. And that's, I think, where we really see how effective we've really been at understanding that this is a flow, that this is not something to get stuck in.
So like even in that situation, there was this flow of like, it felt a little humiliating and it felt a little isolating, but I was like, okay, that's just the first wave. Let me get through this. The goal, I know what the goal is. I know what I need to do. But let me just first feel the emotion, because an emotion takes about 30 to 90 seconds to actually feel. Where it gets stuck in our body is when we don't digest it, when we don't actually feel it. So just notice what those feelings are, where they're sitting, where they're lodged, and just breathe through them and just allow yourself to feel that for a moment. And then just trust that the next piece of the puzzle will show up. Yep. So
that's really well said, Esther. I think the other, like if y'all haven't listened to the first episode, we talk about, I gotta pause because my brain just dropped off. Wait, I was just editing it. So it was like,
let's see. Hold on. Cause I literally had it right here.
You were just saying.
Here. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So if y'all haven't listened to the first episode, Esther and I talk about taking 15 minutes a day to just find one thing that can ground you in your body. And I want to just jump back to that, because I know for a lot of us, even feeling the full spectrum of our emotions is new to us and it might be really unfamiliar to us. So, for example, I have a couple of people in my life who have a fairly limited spectrum of emotions. That both of these people are male, but I think women, we can block our emotions out also. And if you are somebody who has been doing that, like, you might not realize the difference between frustration and anger, or, missing somebody, or just feeling sad that day. Like, you have to kind of start to check in with your body so that you can be more aware of what it's feeling. Otherwise, you might have a very black and white, or like not very many shades of emotions that you have access to. So I think those practices of checking in and getting back into your body is step one. And once you're there and you start to see all the different colors of the spectrum of your emotional bandwidth, then you can start to really observe them as they flow through your body. But you know what I mean, Esther? Like, a lot of people are really, really out of touch. Like they might not realize.
They think that it, like, again, and I understand it because, for me to survive, I did this for a while, but it's like a woman's superpower, but anybody's superpower really is really, as we said last week, is being fully connected. And when you decide to kind of put your emotions aside and be like, oh my gosh, there's just too much to carry, what you're doing is actually you're giving up one of your greatest tools, which is your intuition. And another thing that as women we get made fun of is that, like, oh, we're too emotional, we're too intuitive, it's too much. It's just too much emotion, and it's too much. Now, obviously, everything's a spectrum. Like, we're not talking about like an extreme, but there is really something to be said when you're fully grounded in your body and you're noticing how something feels. And most of the time, when we're looking at something and we're not able to get what we want, like, a lot of women really struggle with manifestation and getting what they want. And part of that concept of the glass ceiling is this negative narrative that, it's a negative narrative of I can't get what I want, brushing up against this emotional place of I need to just block out my emotions. Let me listen to what other people say. Let me do what other people say I should do. Let me ignore what I need. This I saw in the dating world. I see this in the business world. They're like, just do it this way. Don't stop, stop bringing all your crazy stuff into this, which is that emotional kind of field of different. It's a different approach than the way a man kind of enters the business world, or
the way that the world has been carved and sculpted to date, which has been enlarged by a more patriarchal leaning systems, right? Systems that work for mostly half of all people. We do have differences in our brains, and we bring different ways of being to the table. But y'all, now is the time where we need all of it. We need all of the spectrum, because, again, going back to what I was saying at the beginning, we really don't know what is going to change in technology and in society with the new tools that we're releasing into the wild. I don't think it's a coincidence that quantum computing and AI are landing in our world at about the same time, which is also demanding that we be more in touch with our thinking and our emotions as humans. Well, we're not going to get there by continuing to do the same old thing, because, like, the world is a mess, to put it mildly. And that's a lot to do with the fact that we've only been demonstrating a very narrow lens of what it is to be human. And that narrow lens is like an aggressive power. It's kind of a competitive nature. It's not collaborative. It's not thinking 7 generations from now. It's thinking about next quarter or the end of this quarter, like financial returns. Like, those things, sure, they're important, but, they're not important if we don't have grandchildren to inherit all the things that we're doing, right? So, like, it's time for us all to show up in our full human capacity. So we got to do this. We got to get in touch. Like, these tools that we're going to talk about. Esther, what do you do when you're having like a really lousy day, though, and the emotional wave, like today, it's like hitting you like a ton of bricks? What's your technique?
So I just try to find a way to, like, first of all, I take some time to meditate. I move slower, and that's why I didn't necessarily cancel some of the stuff that I had going on, but I took a couple things off my plate because I knew that if I'm going to push through, I'm going to enter those other negotiations or engagements slightly irritated or slightly vulnerable. And for me, it's important to have that accountability of knowing how am I entering that space and is it productive or is it not? And so that's kind of the way I go about it. And I know it's also Monday.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's usually there's a big wave to surf on Monday.
There often is. I really feel for my friends, my former colleagues at CrowdStrike today, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if you don't know, CrowdStrike took like the whole world down on Friday because they sent out a software patch. Yeah, CrowdStrike's a cybersecurity
I heard about that.
firm.
Okay, but tell me a little more.
Yeah, so they sent out a software patch that was buggy and it or had a broken file, and it only affected PCs, but like global PCs, so like airlines and hospitals, and just about everything went blue screen. Like,
wow,
all at once. Yeah. So, that's a bad Monday. Blue screen Monday.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Oh my goodness.
And I will say, I mean, thankfully, when I worked in tech, I didn't have anything quite that catastrophic happen, but certainly there were other high intensity moments. And in those moments, as the developer, you've got to go in there and fix something. You cannot let yourself feel the stress. Like, you have to regulate your nervous system down. Like, I mean, like all the way down, like in the basement. So learning how to keep your cool in those intense, stressful situations is definitely a skill. It was super useful. I learned to do it, but I actually think in doing that, I learned also how to like shut down some of my emotions. Cause sometimes, like you're feeling like as much panic as everybody else. You just got to shut it down because you got to focus on something very analytical and technical and stepwise. But opening that door back up when you need it to be open is really important. And I think that's a good point that you made about like knowing and giving yourself the permission, knowing when to cancel some things, clear out your schedule a little. Like, don't apologize for it. Women, we apologize too much. Like, just honor yourself if you're having a day like that, because you didn't create a business, or you maybe, like, if you're working in a job, presumably you're not working that job because you want to suffer. So, and certainly if you're an entrepreneur, like, that's got to be one of the perks of being an entrepreneur is honoring your own mental needs and emotional needs and taking time.
I always say, like, the thing that we don't realize is we always think we have more time than we need when we actually have. And then another layer of that is we think we have more energy than we have. Mm-hmm. And that one gets impacted more than anything else. And because one complicated situation in a day could zap an entire day's energy. And it's like, it's almost like dangerous, because that's when it starts to damage the nervous system. So the thing is what I like to always do, the way I've kind of approached life now, and again, sometimes it gets busier than others, is I use the art of preparation, which is my next book, by the way. Yeah. My book, Tell Me Something Good, is out. So feel free to go purchase it if you want. It really helps with helping to structure your day and lower that stress level and get you in the right mindset. But the next piece of work that I'm working on is called The Art of Preparation. And the thing is that when we go into life, there are certain things we can't predict, but there are quite a few things that we can prepare that we don't have this like overload on the back end, or we're not problem solving or doing so much damage control on the back end. So, for example, like popping dinners in the freezer, or just getting some paperwork done, or making sure you have full stock of product, or making sure, checks and balances, making sure bills are paid, working on noticing what the stress load is, but eliminating some of those things so that when you enter your day, it isn't this thing of you're like backed up. We're always behind. That's the thing.
Sure.
We are always behind. But just like with finances, like you always need a couple grand more than you think every month, even though you're like, no, it's fine. It's fine. you always need a couple grand there as an emergency. There are always things you cannot predict. And I find that with a day as well, there are so many things you can't predict. And it's so easy to like make this beautiful list and say, this is my schedule and this is all the things I can do. And then really you only have enough energy, forget about time, but energy for about half of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
that's authentic, like honest and authentically.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think it's important to prioritize lists too, because lists can be, I was such a fanatic about lists for years. And then I realized like they're just ongoing. I'm just copying them over and over. And so I personally started to use different types of lists for different things. So like the sort of little small things that maybe I have a day that I have a few appointments and I've got an hour here and a couple hours there. I can bang out a few different small low-hanging fruit items. And then there's those big chunky ones. Those are the ones you should really only have like, that is all you're doing today.
Yeah.
You know, like you've got to like, I think sometimes we block our calendars and our time up as though like every hour is the same energetic hour. It's not. Our energy also goes in cycles throughout the day. It's good to know when your energy is more in line with creative work versus analytical work or for conversational work. Like for me, that's very different at different times of the day and the week even.
Yeah.
You know?
Or even for women in our cycle.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes we're super creative, but 100%. And the thing is, the more honest you are with yourself, and that's kind of where the intuitive part is. It's not that somebody else comes in and says, do this, do that. I'm telling you it works. It's taking that advice, but then applying it to what's already there. And what's there is you. Now, the thing is like this: if you do find yourself super fatigued, or you find that you're not able to accomplish as much as you'd like in a day, that's where you can look at yourself as in your own performance. And the question is, are you taking on too much stress? Do you have any movement in your day? Are you eating correctly? Are you sleeping right? You know, these are all things that will impact your performance. So there's the two components of it, of knowing also like, what kind of life do you have? A really simple thing would be like, even with intermittent fasting. So some people would intermittent fast, but the question is it's not smart to do that on a day that's super stressful. You know, if you do need the energy that day, you need to be able to align your habits and your schedule with your needs, and it needs to be supportive of you as a person. And for women, we tend to be people pleasers, and we like to accommodate everyone in our life, and we run kind of in those terms versus, and then we crash and we're like, oh my gosh, like I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. You know, I've been ruminating on the idea lately that, you know, if you stop doing the people pleasing and you stop like as much, right? Like you stop taking on so much of what is not yours, then other people will pick up the slack. But it's a super hard, especially when it comes to your own personal orbit, like your family dynamics and your, you know, even your work, your team. Like if you're somebody who picks up the slack a lot, it's going to be really hard for you not to, because you're just going to think the whole world is going to crumble if you don't. But what that tells you is that's a bit of a power trip at the same time, right? Like sometimes this people pleasing stuff is like, it's like a maladaptive coping strategy from childhood, when we thought we'd keep ourselves safe by keeping everybody around us happy, but then we become adults and we're actually just driving everyone, including ourselves, crazy. So you can let it drop.
Yeah. I mean, a really great trick with that is that I have a list, or I know the things that I'm very opinionated about. And I know the things that I really like to make choices for. That's and like and where I need to have the last word. And everywhere else, I bow out gracefully.
I do the same thing, Esther.
And it really makes life so much easier, because when we realize that we're living in communities and that other people can do it, maybe they might not be able to do it the way we do it, but the only way that you can actually connect with others is by letting their personal expression into the experience. If they have to always worry about doing it the way you need them to do it, you're not even engaging with an authentic side of them. It's just they're going into this blind guessing game, and they come in with emotional waves of anxiety, hoping, crossing their fingers, hoping that they're going to please you, rather than them just figuring it out the way they would do it and then coming back to your drawing board and saying, I'm okay with them however this turns out. Like sometimes at work, different jobs that I take, my rule always is I'm the boss at home.
Yeah.
That's it. So when it comes to certain things, I don't stress out. That doesn't mean I don't put effort in, but I let go of that obsessive need for it to be a very specific way. And it isn't a lack of responsibility, because for a lot of people, they'd be like,
it's playing to your strengths.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that really works well in relationships too.
It does. And that's mostly what we do as women. It's like we're,
yeah, that's true. Where we think that in relationships, but like in our intimate relationships, I think which is where we can have the most problems.
For sure.
With like getting aligned with the way we actually want to show up, because, those are the relationships that are so vulnerable to us. So I think that's also where they're triggering. But, if you let your partner play to their strengths and you play to yours, it's like splitting the labor, it's just so much easier. It's just, and it's actually like a very nice, natural feeling to let go, to actually let yourself even be taken care of a little bit.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. Totally take a beat, take a breath. Yeah.
Esther, I have a friend, Runa, who teaches about finding your true power.
Okay.
And she has this system called the Pillars of Vitality.
Okay.
And I really like it because it's like, so once you get to past that first layer of like, have you eaten, did you get some sunshine today, or some fresh air at least? Have you slept, and all these basic like maintenance things that we often forget to do. So check those first, before going here. But if you're still feeling like dysregulated and off, especially in like sort of life, the 4 pillars of vitality can help you understand if you're like out of alignment with your true power, with your true calling, because we all need different kinds of rest, and we all need different kinds of play and study and work. And so those are the 4 pillars of vitality. And basically you can learn about yourself through journaling and through all the different modalities, like you can take assessments to kind of understand yourself better, like the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs. They'll give you like a clue into your kind of general disposition. But once you understand what it is you like to do, then you can kind of check the boxes. Like for me, true play is like creative play. Like I need to be really curious and exploring. And if I haven't done any of that in a while, I'll start to feel like something's a little bit off. I like to make things and get into my paints and, just get really artistic. And that's part of my play and part of my expression, which if I'm ever deprived it, I feel like something's missing from me. So knowing those things about yourself is another way to like return to center and kind of have that ongoing list of like, is your kind of rest sitting in the sunshine reading a book or taking a stroll with a friend? That you can kind of pick from your curated list of things that will always bring you that bit closer to your center when you're not there.
Part of the science of that is also when we kind of go into the space of play, what we're doing is we're exiting time and we're entering space.
And flow.
And for women, that like time is very restrictive. Like even in Judaism, the men are restricted by time. They're accountable by time, which there's certain things they have to do, let's say like with prayer or whatever, but it's all within a certain time frame, which is something that women have no obligations to, because women are built differently. And for women, it's about space. And so when we are enslaved by time as women, sometimes we could start feeling that restrictive energy, and we could start feeling restrictive. And then enter that space where we play, where we're like, I'm just going to take my time, figure this out. I'm not going to look at the clock. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to follow. What ends up happening is you're almost able to like expand your vortex of sorts, where you're just like, oh, I have more space than I actually thought I need. And if I told you you had more space or you had more time, which one would you choose?
Ooh. Oh gosh, I know. Well, I know that time is relative, but yeah, that's tough because I mean, right? Like we all think time. We think we want time.
Do, yeah. But the thing is when we enter that space, and I'm giving you the opportunity to really open up that, like just push the boundaries a little, like just push the boundaries of time and enter space. You're able to kind of just float. It's like, outer space, like it's just endless. And for women, we can get lost in that space, and that space is play. Yeah. And it's so important. It's so important to go there.
It's a true creative space, which is like the essence of the feminine energy that runs through everything, in the counterbalance to the masculine energy. We have this capacity that's heightened for the creative. And if we're not tapping into it, it's like a part of us it's like cutting off an arm.
Right. And it does serve a purpose, because it's, I always say, like with our emotions in general, it's just like somebody's energy. If you've ever hung out with people that are extremely tense, or somebody that physically smells, right? Let's just go with that. Being in a yoga class, or just a workout, or just a hot summer day, and like you're standing near somebody that really smells. It's
really not like a hot pheromone smell. Yeah.
It really gets so uncomfortable that you can't think. Like you cannot think, you can't even stand being in your own skin. Now, when we emotionally are smelly, and we haven't emotionally digested whatever we're feeling, it's a similar kind of thing where you can be in a room and somebody could be so tense and you could feel like they're just sucking up all the air.
Because they are.
They are.
Right? It's a low frequency vibration.
It is.
They can measure.
And go ahead.
It just reminded me of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work and his research team measuring the heart frequency when people are doing different kinds of meditations, or when people are feeling different kinds of emotions. Yeah. And it's a measurable field of energy that we throw. And our heart has, it's like, I think it's like 10,000 times stronger than our brain wavelengths. The energetic field that our heart throws out is way stronger than our brain, which is so interesting. There's a weird science part this is also true, y'all, but it's going to sound totally crazy. So go look it up. So there have been cases of people getting heart transplants that start to take on personality traits of the transplant donor, because the heart has so many neurons in it. It's like it's its own type of brain, not like the brain in our head, but it's its own type of brain that is, we just so underestimate it beyond its function as like an organ that moves blood around and oxygen around our bodies. But, I think when to your point about the energetic frequency, when somebody's vibrating on a really low frequency and they're super unaware of it, it does suck the energy from the room around them in. And it's like that person you hang out with that always makes you feel like kind of depleted, versus the person who makes you feel like, wow, we just had an awesome exchange. Like,
and you feel energized or you feel satisfied.
Yeah, it's like an energy bouncing back and forth. Like every time we talk, Esther.
Yeah, I know. That's why this is so great, because it's so and inspiring and energizing.
And we're sharing that with you all listeners out there. So I hope you feel it too.
I feel like it's a really good segment into going into specifics, as you were talking about AI. So I would say take that away.
Oh, man. Okay. So you want to know what I've been playing with?
Yes, please.
Well, so I think, first of all, just to get clear on some terms. So AI is many things now. AI is the underpinning behind so many of our new apps and technologies that we're using. I do a lot with images and sound and video, and I've been looking for ways to make AI generated art that is more in line with what I want to make. So I've been training and feeding my own data into models so that I can kind of craft this little tech margin world. And I was running up against the limits of some of the user interfaces. So I've kind of went under the hood into more a coder land. And it's just incredible how you can get such magic out of this technology, I guess. But it's only magic if you learn how to communicate clearly with it. If you either want something truly abstract and out there, and you use descriptive words to push it in a psychedelic direction, let's say, or if you want something that's more like a story and a narrative, then you have to bring it really in. Just like if you're writing a story, you have to think about, how am I going to craft these words so that my reader will understand them? It's the same with AI. And I just don't think we're so far from understanding that in the general population. Everybody just thinks that, AI, that's freaky, it's going to replace my jobs. No. Like, your language, whatever language you speak, is going to become your new programming language. If you're not a coder, it doesn't matter. Get really clear. Learn how to prompt. But prompting is just the action of engaging with the AI. But before that, like, you will soon have the power to craft worlds, basically. It's amazing. It's a super, what's the word? Emergent space that we're entering. I think it's perfect for all of this creative, intuitive energy that we have as women, in particular, Esther. I think we've been waiting for more diversity to come into the tech conversation. Well, I think now is the time. Like, we need to be here, because it's only going to hurt us if we don't take part in it. So, ladies, let's get on it. We got to increase these numbers of people representing the conversation around AI and tech.
Totally. And I feel like it comes full circle, where we've been struggling to communicate clearly. Like, a lot of people have a lot of words, but, like one of my editors once said, he's like, if you have to explain to me why you wrote something a certain way, you failed. That's it. You're done. Like, go back to the drawing board. And he was very right, because at the end of the day, it's not just the words. A lot of us are in a space where we can excuse ourselves, we can elaborate, we can distract people from what's actually going on. We distract ourselves. But when we kind of cut all the BS and we focus on what we want, what we need, where we want to go. I always say, like, the interior design, right? So it's like the interface of whatever you're going to create.
Also the title of another one of Esther's books.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say it's not so much about the words, but about the environment you're in, or the space you're in, the tone of voice, if the person can take you seriously or not. It's not about how strong the tone is going to be. It's going to be like, are your patterns or your convictions or any of that, like, do you have that to back you up? Do you have proof of concept? And it's like, we have to take some time to figure that out. And what's so cool is when you go into the AI space, it's just like, it's that blank slate of like, whatever you tell me is what I'm going to end up,
or it's interpretation of whatever you tell me.
Yeah, exactly. I think it'll improve the quality of our communication in general. So for me, that's what I think AI, like, a lot of people are like, oh, AI is going to take over. It's like, no, it's going to challenge people to communicate much clearer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so interesting how technology always has had both positive and negative. Every technology. Yeah. More important technology and more transformative technology have had more positives and more negatives. And this is no different. But I think to your point about making us communicate better, I also think that what it does is it's sort of a leveler. If you're a mediocre writer, you can be a little bit better. If you don't know how to code at all, you can get some of the boilerplate stuff, and you can get, you need to like have somebody who's an expert look your stuff over, but you can now become mediocre if you have no skill. But if you're excellent, you have the potential, the ask is upon you also to upskill yourself to become a true leader in your domain, because we'll still need leaders in every domain. It's just that everybody could get a little bit of sprinkling of knowledge now real fast, even faster than the Google could give us.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite things to do with AI that's just a super simple, basic, like day-to-day use case, just have it like be your little virtual assistant, like,
yeah. Can you elaborate on that? Cause it was so amazing. You were talking about it and it was fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the new things that I paid, I don't know if it's on the free, but the paid version of ChatGPT from OpenAI is a background audio, and it's only on your mobile device. So you turn on your ChatGPT and then you put on background audio, and you can just talk to it. You can just say, I'm taking some notes for an article I'm writing, and I can just speak the way I'm speaking right now with all kinds of filler words, not necessarily the most logical order of thoughts, because that's often how it comes out when you're brainstorming before you do your organizing section. But ChatGPT's background audio will take your jumble, organize it for you into a very neatly formatted and logical flow. So if there was a logic that I didn't realize was in my thoughts, it found it and put it into that flow for me. So that would have taken me, not a ton more time, but it just allowed me to stay in my flow of thought. Maybe I'm just sort of sitting here and I'm painting, and sometimes I get ideas while I'm painting, and I can just talk to it, and it compiles everything in one document at the end. Like, there's lots of things like that maybe anything that here for the listeners, if you want to play around with it, next time you have to Google something that's maybe like, I don't know, how do I get skunk smell off of my dog, right? Instead of Googling it, put it into ChatGPT and get a list of ideas of products, like things that you can use. Like it's just so much more robust than searching on Google. So that's just one of the myriad ways of like practical everyday pieces. Was that the one you wanted me to talk about?
Yeah, that was okay. Yeah, it's so cool. Yeah. I didn't start using it yet, but it's on my list of things.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I think the other thing too about being, having more women in tech is the solutions that we come up with are going to be catered to our problems. And, one of the reasons why tech has felt like it has is because it doesn't represent all of us, right? Like it's not like there's some gatekeepers there, but like if we don't believe we belong in a place, it's really hard for us to see how we fit there.
100%.
That's yeah.
Yeah, it would be so cool, like, going back to AI is like, each of us being able to like communicate our cycles, into AI, and then being able to monitor where we are in the sense of the day or what we're feeding into the machine, and then them being able to bounce that off. It could be really cool.
Yes, and all of the data we feed into AI doesn't have to be training the models. So if you are concerned, just for anybody who's listening, wondering about this, if you are concerned about training models on private data, like Esther was saying, like if you were to do something like a journal or like a cycle journal, just make sure you are picking an AI where you can control whether or not your data is used for the training model, which usually means you're going to pay a monthly subscription because, part of the trade-off, as we all know from Facebook and all the social medias, is if something's free, it's going to use your data. That's the trade-off in the modern world. So if you want privacy, pay for it and then make sure you can check, do not train the model on my data, because that is a real concern. And we don't really know what that means yet. And our regulation will always lag behind on that.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
Yeah. And also, if anybody listening has questions about anything in particular with AI or building a business, please drop them at the bottom here, or send either Esther or myself an email. We'd love to answer your questions on the show.
Yeah, anything that, any topic, anything.
Absolutely.
Because we're going to have many conversations.
Yeah, we like a lot of the subjects around tech and spirituality and
for sure.
Being female, creativity.
Also, what you're looking for in a role model. I feel like for us, a big part of this conversation was like, what are we looking for? What do we, and how do we find it? So
right. And remember, the way this came about was really, we were talking about that and we realized we have to step into the shoes of our own role models.
Right.
Because for so many of us, there aren't role models doing what we're doing out there necessarily. So how do we craft ourselves into being those role models for ourselves, but also for our daughters and for their friends? There's such a tremendous lack of women in all forms of power, leadership, in embracing the feminine power that the world needs so desperately. So, if you can't find a role model, figure out what she looks like. Get AI to make you a list. And step into her shoes.
Yes. For sure.
Yeah.
Well, awesome.
But, I think to summarize, what we're talking about here is stepping into the shoes of your own role model, figuring out who she is, understanding what you want in life. I think for a lot of us, we don't know that. We've never had the time to consider it. Ways you can do that: spend 15 minutes every day getting inside your body. If you've never spent time just doing things that are present, that's one thing you really ought to incorporate. And then journaling. What do you use, Esther? What do you use to?
So I feel like, coming back to the beginning, it's like, notice what comes after that wave. So I think it's getting past the waves of what the world demands from us, or from those emotional waves. Instead of trying to do damage control all the time, just get past some of that stuff, breathe through them, and then get very specific on what your needs and wants are. And don't be ashamed of them, because I find that there's a lot of shame around the things we think we might need or want.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that I find for myself that comes up sometimes, is that shame of oh, I won't be good enough. Or if I ask for that, people might think I'm weird. You know what I mean?
Or
all those
too
little
demanding.
Things. Exactly. Or judgmental. So it's getting past the shame, getting past that wave. Notice what your waves are in emotions. We all have patterns. So just notice what those things are, and then ask yourself, like Sonia was saying, when you do that, when you formulate those 15 minutes, sit down and say to yourself, okay, if you get past that, what is next for you? If you're able to expand your energy, where are you going? Where would you like to go? What would you like to build? And that's it. And feel into that space from a positive approach rather than a negative. And see if you can use progressive words, right? Things that are positive, and notice. And I think that really helps. And more often than not, you'll find yourself stuck. And because for some of us, we restrict ourselves in ways where we're if I don't need anything, right? If I go more into that minimal lifestyle, if I don't need anything or anyone, I won't get hurt. Right. So, but then the thing is,
tattoo.
It's
my old persona.
So that's the thing, that it's counterproductive.
Yeah, it is.
So take that time.
You make yourself hard, you make yourself brittle.
Yeah. And it's easier to break. So take that time to expand that energy, go into that space rather than time. Take that time also to put time aside. And that is something that I did actually do this morning. And I shared something really cool with Sonia. And that came from me playing, taking time to play. And I'm check this out. And it came from just giving myself that time I just felt like I just needed to step out of the day-to-day for a minute. And so that would be my suggestion as well.
And I will say for those of you who, this might be really new, even taking 15 minutes to yourself in the day. And it might be really new because you might not feel all that safe in your own head, because you might have a lot of trauma that you haven't dealt with, whatever the reason. If that feels true for you, do this with a friend. You don't need to do it alone. Have an accountability buddy who you just kind of text each other and whatever it is that makes it so you can feel safe to get back in your body. Because a lot of us leave our bodies, not just because the world demands it of us, but because there were one or more times in our lives that we didn't feel safe. And some of us never came back into our bodies. So that's something you want to definitely work with a professional if that's true for you, if you have that in your network.
For sure.
Certainly with support. But getting inside your body is only going to help you, though. It really is. It's where we're supposed to live.
Yes.
While we're here.
Yes. Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Esther.
Thank you, Sonia.
Always awesome.
Yes. Always awesome. Always awesome.